help with the issue of crime, helping to keep residents and students safe? And two, do you agree with the governor's plan to reduce gun violence?
Well, first of all, let me say I am so impressed with our law enforcement in this community. I've spent the last few weeks talking to department heads and leaders in our government and law enforcement in particular. Our state's attorney, Matt Massarello, and our police chief, Barbara Duncan, the two of them, as well as in partnership with Wacomico County Sheriff Mike Lewis and the state police barrack on the north end of Salisbury. Clearly, they are working together, and they're working together in a way that the people who have held those offices in the past haven't before. They are partnering. There are no egos involved. They are accomplishing great things. And we've seen that in a reduction of our Part 1 crime in Salisbury. So Part 1 crime is reduced dramatically in Salisbury. And I understand from Mr. Massarello's office, and I understand from Chief Duncan's office, their goals are in getting us completely off of any high crime lists. And they've already taken master strokes at that. They have reduced crime significantly, violent crime significantly in Salisbury, and it's really an amazing thing. The Safe Streets team that was developed through funding from the governor's office has been incredibly effective. That's a multi-jurisdictional law enforcement team. The Salisbury Police Department is reconstituting that team, is my understanding. They are incredibly effective at reducing drug-related crime. And this all leads to the problem we have today. In order to get us to that next step, in order to keep this progress going, we've got to have more officers on the street. And the number that I have heard from our police and prosecution officials is around 30 officers, or 30 personnel added to the crime-fighting teams. If they could add 30 personnel to the Salisbury Police Department, it would take the burden off of officers who are currently filling dispatcher roles. It would take the burden off of undermanned squads that should have 12 officers and currently have 6 or 7. It would take the burden off of the administrative teams. It would take the burden off of CID, our Criminal Investigative Division, which should be fully manned with detectives who have a manageable caseload so they can get those cases, get the best evidence to the state's attorney's office to be prosecuted. The investment that needs to be made is in manpower. And in order to get there, we've got to make some decisions about how we're using the tax monies that citizens of Salisbury are paying. And that's going to mean some tough decisions. That's going to mean we can't pay for some of the things we want to pay for. But I believe that in order to effectively reduce crime, we're going to have to make those hard decisions now, and we're going to have to make an increased investment in our police officers.
Okay, and I want to ask you about someone who's running for mayor. You talked about being able to work with the mayor and how that's a vital role if you were elected to the city council. If you were both elected, do you think that you'd be able to work with Joe Alborough, especially given some of the more racy comments that he's made or some of the more controversial statements that he's posted on his site?
Sure. I think from my understanding, and I haven't spent a lot of time on Joe's site, although I'm familiar with it, I think most people in Salisbury are. I think my understanding is that he's posted some questionable material. I haven't seen it, and I haven't heard him make those statements in person. The statements that I've heard him make in person run counter to what I've heard about on the website. So I have no reason to want to accuse him of being racist or anything like that. That said, it's important that everyone who's a candidate for public office, everyone who's in the public eye, recognize that your words and the things that you select to put on a website or anything like that are going to be critiqued. So we've got to be focused on issues. We've got to keep above board. We've got to be interested in the things that matter to our community. And that nonsense, it just doesn't matter. So I think Mr. Alborough hopefully would be the first to say, I want to be focused on healing our community, on bringing people together, on revitalizing Salisbury, on bringing new business to Salisbury, on jobs, and not on throwing petty comments at one another. So the bottom line is, absolutely, I'd be ready to work with him. I'd hope he would be a model citizen and a model mayor if he were elected. And I know I would do everything I could to work with him, to work with Mr. Speeves, to work with Ms. Cohen, to work with whoever's elected to Ms. Shields' seat, whether it's Shaney or Ms. Jackson or Ms. Polk, and Ms. Mitchell, of course. I'd be ready to work with any of them, as well as Mayor Ireton if he's reelected. I'll be ready to work with him on day one.
And you talk about being a model mayor, being a model politician. So a great way for us to understand people running for office is to ask them about some of their political idols. So who are some of your political idols and why do they influence you? Why did they have an influence on you?
That's a great question. That's not one I've thought about too much. Many of my idols are outside of the world of politics. I would say in their words, the brothers Kennedy, John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, have inspired me more than really anyone else. As far as, I mean, if you think about, there's some great John Kennedy quotes out there, but my favorite, I think, is anyone can make a difference or can change the world, and everyone should try. With Robert Kennedy, the world requires, or the world needs, a child's spirit, one of inquisitive thought. And that quote goes on for a mile. The guy could write. But I think those two in their words are an inspiration to me. As far as actions, I got to say FDR is a bit of an idol. He was able to do big things. He was able to do big things in a difficult time, and he was able to do big things in a difficult time with a war going on. So I think he's a model in many ways. A little closer to home, I've always admired Rick Pollitt, our county executive. I've always admired him as an individual and the way he brings people together. And I think our governor's done a really good job in a tough economy. Maryland has remained strong. Our schools are still #1 in the country. So I'm impressed with our governor and our lieutenant governor, who is a colonel in the Army, by the way. So a superior officer to me.
Now, I got to tell you, I didn't write this question. One of our political guys did, but he told me I had to ask you. Will we see your name on the presidential ballot in 2016?
That's funny. That's funny. Absolutely not.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
You may be one of the most definitive people running in the political world right now.
Can anyone else say that? I'm looking in the camera right now. Was 100% certainty you will not see my name on the ballot for presidential candidacy in 2016.
And is there anything else you'd like to add to say to the students about you?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, if you're registered to vote, I would say please vote on February 26th, not tomorrow, but next Tuesday. We obviously want everyone to get out and participate, and that is true for Salisbury University students as well. One of the most important things that I think can happen is repairing or building deeper connections between the community and the university. And then lastly, of course, if you're interested in my platform, if you're interested in participating, volunteering in any way, or if you just have more questions, go to my website, jacobday.com. I've got a platform in there, as well as information about me and my background, and a implementation plan, which lays out everything that I'd hope to accomplish, everything I'd like to implement if I'm lucky enough to be elected.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us today, and I'm sure this won't be the last time we see you.
Thanks, Eli.